fortunate to have our friends from JCP&L with us. Tonight I have my immediate right, Kieran Tyndall, who has been instrumental in communicating to me during the power outages. I know that's why everyone's here tonight. Vice President John Anderson and Ed Jinks, all with JCP&L. They've offered to come here and speak to the residents and discuss what some of the concerns that we all have, besides me complaining every time the power goes out and hammering Kieran getting trucks into Homedale. I thought it would be wise to let the residents speak a little bit tonight. And they do have a presentation on a $400 million improvement program to the system, but they chose to open it up to the public first, and then we'll show a presentation and their comments. So why don't we come up one at a time, and if I know your name, I'll recognize you, and I do know Jay and Ella's name, so Jay, why don't you start us
off? Jay and Ella, Homedale resident, thank you for coming, and thank you.
Can I sit down?
Jay, can you speak a little bit louder?
Sure. That's not a problem with me.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for being attendant in our Bell Works. My background is from the utility industry. I worked on Wall Street Moody's, Kidder Peabody, Payne Weber, and UBS at utilities analysts. And the reason I bring that up is about 18 years ago, I was in the executive dining room of, at the time, Payne Weber, and I was having breakfast with my boss at the time, with Tony Alexander, the former CEO of First Energy, the parent of JCP&L. And I recently moved into Homedale, again, say 17, 18 years ago. And I was appalled at the quality of the electric service and the ability of it to be maintained during any type of situation. We had momentaries all the time, we had outages all the time. And when I said that to Mr. Alexander at breakfast, he took out his phone, he literally, in the middle of the breakfast, got someone on the phone, and they ran a whole analysis in the subsequent weeks on how they could improve the circuit in the home. And they got better for a while. And then since then, they've been worse. And worse and worse. And then we had the storms, and I know there was a bunch of rate activity involved around that. What residents have a hard time understanding, and what I have a hard time understanding with my background, is why First Energy has skimped in investing in our distribution system. And probably the biggest visibility on that is the telephone poles or electric poles, and whether you actually are in charge of them, or Verizon is in charge of them. I mean, it's like a laughing, ongoing joke in town how bad the condition is of some of our poles. Now, I know some of our groups have tweeted pictures out to the BPU, to JCP&L. There's a lot of rushing around fixing them over the past 6 months. But still, as you drive around the area, not just Homedale, if you go into Marlboro now on 520, there's a telephone pole that leans about another inch every few months, and it's literally like this with transformers on top. On the way here today, on Homedale Road, there's a broken telephone pole on someone's property with a repaired pole next to it, and that's been like that for over a year. When we tweeted out pictures, our group, we had broken poles and bent poles on 520, one of which was next door. If you remember, there's a fire recently, you may not know the specifics, the transformers blew onto the road and could have caused many houses to burn down, right next to a major natural gas pipeline. But I won't keep rambling with examples. The distribution system in this town has been overall neglected for years, notwithstanding the press releases you put out, notwithstanding the dollar amounts you spend. And during most of this time, JCP&L, which was found by the BPU, was over-earning. So I appreciate this new plan you're coming forward with. I appreciate the time that it will take and the amount of money to try to catch up from where you should have been going over the decade. But my concern is, when I read the plan, you're now going to stay out of a rate case for 5 more years, up to 5 more years. So the last rate case was December 2016 after Superstorm Sandy. When you add 5 more years, JCP&L is theoretically now going to be out of a rate case for 7 years. And it's the rate cases when your rates are reconciled to allowed returns. So the concern I have is we're going to do a lot of this stuff we should have done anyhow. We should have had it in rates. We over-earned during many of those years. And then, oh, by the way, we're not going to be able to reconcile your rates with the BP for many years. You're going to do this stuff now, then on an ongoing basis, you're going to let this ride, let your maintenance expenses go down, and overall, within a few years, we're not going to be that much better off. And then it's going to be many, many years before we reconcile your over-earnings. Basically, we would hope for a much more straightforward, full effort from you guys on a sustainable basis to make sure our system is much better. And the final thing I'll say is, when you travel, and I don't know if anyone else has any other experiences, if you travel to other states or towns, and with my prior job I've traveled a lot, their electric distribution systems are in much better shape than ours. Whether it's the substations, I mean, even your substations look horrible. Rusted fences, rusting equipment. I just think beyond this effort, you need to be much more whole with our service territory. Thank you. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Why don't you sit down?
Okay.
I'd like to answer, make a statement, you can make a statement.
Again, just wanted to thank everybody for coming out tonight. As I said, I'm John Anderson, Vice President. You covered a lot of ground, and I'm not sure if I'll be able to answer all the questions, but I just want to touch on a couple of brief points. Excuse me. First, there's a lot of conversation about utility poles and the liens, and to give everybody just an idea and a background is that roughly 50% of the wood utility poles that you see out there are owned by, in this case, Jersey Central Power and Light. The other half, roughly, are owned, and are, in fact, telephone poles owned by Verizon. So what you see out there are those poles that are owned by Verizon are maintained by Verizon. Those owned by Jersey Central are maintained by Jersey Central. What we are, as part of a reliability, ongoing reliability plan, is that all poles are inspected on a 10-year cycle. So therefore, we're going out every year, and we have a contractor that we contract with that goes out and inspects these poles. And there are many poles that you may look at it and say that pole is leaning or that pole doesn't look good, but there is a series of tests that are done, and those poles are then certified as, the date and, the year that they were inspected. And if they need to be replaced, we get a list every year of the poles that need to be replaced, and those that are rotting or have some other type of structural defect, we go out there and then we have to report that back through the Board of Public Utilities. So we do this, between, most of what you see is that even, for example, our circuit maintenance plan will be to go out and do, infrared testing. That's going to be also on a cycle plan. And so a lot of what you're discussing in terms of our reliability or perceived lack of reliability, the outages are the outages, and there's no question. And I also would say that for anybody that's here tonight, I assume you're here obviously because you have a strong interest in the reliability or maybe the lack of reliability. And I just encourage all of you, if you haven't, to make sure that your outages are in fact called in and documented, because we do have things out there all the time that will go wrong on the system, and that someone is having a series of outages and are suffering kind of almost in vain, because if for whatever reason, if they're not reporting it, we're not going to know. So that, yeah, we are aware of the larger outages, but for example, Ed Jinks, to my right, is the supervisor in the reliability group of the engineering department. And we actually really count on the feedback and the information we get from you as our customers to make sure that we are on top of and investigating, because it happens where someone will say, I am so frustrated, I just keep having outages, and sure enough, we look at it, we go out and do an inspection, and we find that there's a problem. And we get out there and we'll fix it. So, as I said, there's a lot that you cover a lot of ground, and but I would also just want to add is that when we do talk about this Reliability Plus program tonight, which I'm looking really forward to and I'm very pleased with, but understand that this is an effort that is not in lieu of, but this is over and above our normal program of work, that body of work that we do every year. So that's why what we're looking at with this program, if and when it's approved by the Board of Public Utilities, that this program, as I said, is augmenting and is in addition to the standard maintenance. So it's not a matter of it going away. And as far as postponing a rate case, and again, I'm not in the rates department, so I really, and that's an area that I really don't want to delve into because I'm just not that versed in it. But in essence, part of this and how the BPU structured the electric utilities to in fact have this program, because Jersey Central has filed one, PSE&G has filed one, and so has Atlantic City Electric. And that was intentional. That was the point of why this was created by the BPU, was so that we will, as the electric utilities, take advantage of this. But understand that it's also going to mean that although there's not going to be a base rate case, but every 6 months the company will be filing its, in essence, its plan and what it has spent, so that there will be these subsets of checks and balances. And then again, as to your point, when it's over at the end of the 4th year, then we go in for a base rate case. But we're in essence be going in every 6 months for almost to say like a mini rate case, as we're looking for to get this program paid for. But please understand, this will literally, everything that we're going to cover tonight in this plan is over and above what we already do.
My only follow-up comment is the concern is over the 7-year period, the cumulative potential for over-earning will be lost. And even if the BPU says you're over-earning, a lot of it won't be able to be recouped. And I realize it's probably beyond most your jurisdiction, probably most in the room care about. The only other thing I'll say is respectfully, beyond my background, there are a lot of very intelligent, tuned-in people in this town that are candidly with a lot going on involved in utilities. I just want you to know, again, respectfully, the Homedale citizens are woke on this subject. They're involved now. They're involved in social media. They're involved at BPU meetings. I just respectfully hope you really do your best to do a true good effort at improving our system for the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
And just one other point, for everyone's sake, and this one probably will be repeated throughout the night several times, but you are all encouraged as you talk about, being engaged as Homedale residents, by all means, because this, now that we filed the Reliability Plus program, this was filed on July 13th, that now we are waiting to hear back from the board as to when the public hearings are going to be. So there will be, we're hoping soon will be announced a series of public meetings and their locations, and clearly there will be ones for the folks here in this room to be able to attend. And again, that's all part of the process. So, we hope that you'll be able to, hear what we have to say tonight. We're here to listen to you as well and take your feedback and take your comments, but understand that then we will have public hearings specifically about this, and everyone with any concerns, by all means, please raise them.
Kathy.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Weber. I live in the southern end of Homedale, and in particular in a neighborhood known as the Heather Hill Division. And we actually have a very active neighborhood Facebook page run by one of our former Bell Labs PhDs, and keeps us apprised of the neighbors communicate every single power outage and immediately communicate it to JCP&L. And I can provide documentation on that till there's no tomorrow. Having said that, what has happened is, I've been there 30 years. For the first 20 years, I don't recall having power problems. The last decade, it's to the point where it's almost every month that we have power outages in our neighborhood, either some or all of the entire neighborhood. And I do not understand why this is continuing to the extent that virtually half my neighborhood now has Generac generators. And so my question would be, why has the service degraded so much in the last decade? And are you looking at any short-term solutions so that we're not sitting there wondering every time we turn around, what power outage are we going to have next? And are you looking at any rebate programs if the answer is everybody has to go out and buy their own $7,000 to $10,000 generator? Because it just seems absurd to me that we're living in third world conditions in Homedale. So that's my concern. And we have all the documentation, and we call stuff in
All right, did you want to?
Sure. There's one thing that I would ask is, and anybody here, we have some note cards up here front, some pens, and if you feel that we haven't adequately answered you this evening, or if you feel that you specifically, your home, your business, are having ongoing reliability issues, we would encourage you to please leave your name, a good contact email or phone number, as well as your address. And we will follow up with you on any of your concerns. We will track down the right answer internally within our company and make sure that somebody gives you that phone call or that email back. We want to have this ongoing dialogue. I think that we've collaborated very well with our local municipalities, Homedale specifically. A lot of what we're here to discuss tonight in this Reliability Plus program, just so everybody's clear, this is all about distribution. This is all an investment in that distribution system. So I think some of those concerns will be addressed in that presentation. But if you wouldn't mind leaving your information, we could definitely take a look at you and your neighbors' reliability data and history and get back to you and let you know what the cause is and what our planned solution is. Because we're not in the business of leaving our customers in the dark. We're looking to broaden and build and get things where they need to be.
Sid.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Very well.
Well, gentlemen, thanks for coming here today.
Louder, please.
My name is Sid Nag. I'm a resident of Tiburon Drive. I've stayed there for almost 30 years. Moved to Mobile in 1998. As somebody said earlier, when we first moved here, there used to be no power outages. For the last 10 years, we've seen consistent power outages. And specific to Tiburon Drive, the reason for power outages are trees falling on power lines. What I want to know from you guys today, and I've talked to Kieran about this in the past as well, what are you doing to mitigate that problem? One of the reasons given to me in my conversation with Kieran was that we do not have access to private property trees keep falling on these power lines. I've talked to a number of my neighbors, and that's not the case. They would welcome JCP&L to come and trim those trees. My question is, what is the truth here? Are you being prevented from private property owners trimming their trees, or is it something else? And secondly, regardless of that, how often is your deforestation program being implemented to prevent these power outages? We're living in third world conditions, as the earlier lady said. Let us count for one. We had this situation during Hurricane Irene or Sandy, I think Pat was the mayor. I worked with him very closely on that during that time. The power stopped after that, but it's resumed again. I know this is a new regime at JCP&L. I'd like to know what you guys are going to do.
All right, thank you. This is a very good question, and I'll answer this in a several part answer. In New Jersey, the Board of Public Utilities and the utilities here are on a 4-year cycle for vegetation management. So what that means is on both transmission and distribution, and if you allow me to just step back for a minute, we don't want to make any assumptions or talk about the system in a way that you're not following us. So you look at the transmission system is what is the large towers, the large steel towers that are lattice, that are taking the power from generation stations, moving it bulk power cross country to major substations, and steps the voltage down, and then you have sub-transmission, so again, transmission with a T, the big stuff, right? Steps the voltage down to sub-transmission, which is now the voltage that is feeding most of the substations in the service territory. And then distribution with a D, as in David, is the wood poles and wires that move the power locally here through the streets, to your homes, through neighborhoods, and local businesses. So this Reliability Plus program and vegetation management is a major piece. But to be specific, the 4-year cycle is that we will go out and inspect these circuits. All the circuits out of any one substation are done at the same time. And it is not like a cookie cutter approach where you're just saying, I'm trimming back 15 feet and that's it. It's species specific. So what you're trying to achieve is, as the forestry staff goes out to do their job, They're looking at, whatever that species is, you're looking for 4 years of clearance plus a margin of error. So the idea is by the time you're going back 4 years later for the next cycle, the vegetation has grown, not quite back to the conductors, but close, and then you come back and you do it again, okay? It's a combination of pruning trees, and it's also removing trees that have been identified as hazardous. So what you have when you talk about trees on private property, the utility has a right to come in and perform vegetation management when it comes to pruning and clearing and keep clear our facilities. But when it comes to taking a tree and cutting it all the way down, that's where we have to seek the property owner's permission to do so. So that in certain instances, we'll go out and we will want, and we do, we have some property owners that are more than willing to say, you go out and do whatever it is you want to do, I have no problem with it. We get good clearances. We have other folks that absolutely love their trees and are adamant to say, it's not the trees, it's something else. And to give you an idea that, in this part of the state, in this what is our northern central New Jersey region, you've got a very high tree density, and tree-related outages are in fact the leading cause of outages in this part of our service territory. And it's not just the trees in and of themselves, but it's also the wildlife that goes with it. For many folks, they don't realize that you have trees and then you have squirrels. And as much as you would look at it and say, I cannot believe you're telling me that this outage, I was without power for 6 hours, and you're telling me a squirrel did this? And the answer is yes. And then not only that, but right now, we're just coming out of thunderstorm season, and of course, as you all know with Florence, we're in hurricane season. But at this time of the year now, the squirrels become very active. And they're doing that much more foraging and that much more running around in the trees. And we get a spike in squirrel-related outages in the fall for just that reason. So, and again, we're not going to get into it right now. We're going to wait for the presentation. But I can say there's going to be a major piece of this investment in this Reliability Plus program is going to be directed at vegetation management, because it's going to be about proactively getting the clearances we need and getting overhang removed from above the conductors. And it's going to be, again, and we'll talk more about it, but if anybody here is familiar with the emerald ash borer, is an insect that has now come in and is now in the state and has been identified, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's in around up about 50 municipalities it's now been identified. It was first detected here in Monmouth County in 2015. And you can go ahead and Google it, and there's a map, there's a great map that the State Forest Service has, and you can see what municipalities and where it's been affected. But even part of this veg management program that we've started this year, notwithstanding Reliability Plus, is to be targeting these ash trees proactively, because this insect, it's not a matter of if it's going to kill the ash tree, it's a matter of when. And this is a major problem, and this has already been going on in Ohio. It's done a tremendous amount of damage in Pennsylvania and points west. But it's now here in New Jersey, and as I said, you can go ahead and Google it, emerald ash borer. And as a matter of fact, it was actually on the front page of the Star Ledger a year ago at this time. So it's a big problem. But again, to specifically answer your question, there's a major difference between what rights we have on a transmission right-of-way with a T versus distribution with a D. Transmission is again, those large towers, right? We have, maybe the right-of-way is 150 feet, maybe it's 200 feet, maybe it's 100. But we have a prescribed width to that right-of-way that we are to clear and keep clear, and we do. But on distribution, we do not have a physical right-of-way distance, but we have the rights, the aerial rights to come in and clear and keep clear. So that's why it's a little bit different when it comes to the distribution side of it. But there are plenty of folks, I assure you, and we may be coming to an ash tree near you in the near future and be asking you proactively to say maybe it is in your front yard, not near the conductor, but if it falls, it's going to take the wires down, and we're going to want to go in and proactively remove that tree now while it's alive before it gets affected by the emerald ash borer.
So I guess on the right-of-way question, I have an additional question, right? I got a notice from the Homedale Township about, I'm going to say about 6 months ago, saying that I have to trim my trees because it's obstructing vehicle and traffic view, right? Why can't we have an ordinance in the township that gives JCP&L the right of way to trim those trees, regardless of the D or T?
Well, they have up to 15
feet, right?
Well, again, we have,
What he's telling me-
it describes it as we have the right to clear and keep clear. So it's going to depend on the species. So for example, if you have, let's say, a silver maple, it's going to be tough to get 4 years of clearance because they grow so quickly. On the other hand, if it's, let's say, a cedar tree, they're going to grow 6 to 8 inches in a growing season.
Okay. So do you have any statistics based on which areas are being impacted more in the township due to continuously falling trees? And should you be deforesting those areas more than the others? Have you thought about that? I know you have
Yes.
a plan, right?
Yeah,
This plan is a 5-year plan. What are we going to do in the interim? What if the plan doesn't get approved by BPU?
Well, there are several questions there, but what I can tell you is, to answer the first part of your question, is that as far as what are we going to do? I feel again, and it's just my opinion, but I feel we have a very good plan here, and I feel confident that the BPU is going to like it. You know, they're starting to look into it now. Obviously, the public hearings are going to shed more light, but I'm confident that we've got a very robust plan here. As far as your question about, you know, as I said, with whether it's transmission or distribution, but with distribution, because we do not have a physical right-of-way, but we do have the right to clear and keep clear our conductors, but it doesn't give us a prescribed width to say from the curb back 15 feet into your yard, or from the curb back to the edge of your front door. It's not that type of a right-of-way.
Ralph?
Thank you.
Good evening, Ralph Blumenthal, 20 Thank you also for being here. Hearing a little bit cart before the horse, because you hadn't heard the presentation yet.
Ralph, a little louder, please.
Okay. As I read some of the information about the proposal, some of the questions that came to mind that I didn't see being answered.
Speaking to the microphone, sir.
Try this. Is that better?
Thank you.
Yeah. This is a roughly $400 million plan. To me, I said, well, what does that mean? I don't know. $400 million compared to what? Is the current budget for this $1 million or $40 billion? So there is no context around the $400 million. To what extent is this going to increase the efforts of the various projects? Is this going to mean you're going to be doing 3 times as much tree clearing or 10% more? I couldn't tell. How does this fit together with what you've been doing or should have been doing all along? You should be doing in all of these subjects enough so that we have reliable service. And with the added steps that you're taking, presumably we'll get there, but I hope the added steps don't go away so that after the 4 years, we're back in a hole again. So those are, perhaps some of your presentation will address this.
Yeah, and Mr. Blumenthal, thank you. You're right. You're without a line in the sand, without any type of a benchmark to say, where are we starting from? That's a very valid point. One that I will give you, because it's math that comes very easily off the top of my head, is that right now we spend roughly $25 to $30 million a year on vegetation management.
This is for the state?
No, this is for JCP&L service territory only. So roughly $25 to $30 million a year, and this plan, for example, is going to be roughly doubling that. Or over and above that, say 25 million, will be an additional 25 million. So in essence, doubling. So that's just for the veg management piece. It's going to vary on some of the other components, but clearly, please understand too, is that part of what this is all about, the Reliability Plus program, is that things have changed, okay, in our system, whether it be, one is like the emerald ash borer, as this insect is now affecting New Jersey. Another is some new technology that's out that you would say, okay, in a perfect world, I don't know what, there's got to be a good analogy, but part of what we're doing here is there is some new technology that's been made available that we can now take, purchase and install in the system that wasn't available even 5 years ago. So the idea is to say that instead of kind of picking away at this slowly but surely, This is an acceleration and over, as I said, an over and above too. So that's part of it as well. So that what you're looking at, for the most part, is reliability investment that has not been performed before. Whether it be this type of overhang removal on three-phase line, which again we'll get into, whether it be these smart fuses that we're talking about, which we'll get into. But that's an example of technology that wasn't even available 5 years ago that we're now going to be working with and getting installed in the field, that we are very confident is going to have an immediate and positive impact on reliability. And again, we answer to the Board of Public Utilities. We need to be able to demonstrate that whatever investment we want to make is going to be yielding results and producing dividends.
Thank you. Just one, so I look forward to what the presentation will have to say. One other question, comment with regard to vegetation management that we, my wife has been chair of the shaping committee, so she has talked to your folks about the vegetation management for many years. Typically, and there are always exceptions, the electric lines are at the top of the poles.
That's correct.
And the telephone and cable and whatever else is lower down.
Yep.
As we mentioned earlier, half the poles are Verizon, half are JCP&L, I don't know if there's third-party ones as well. It appears that the bulk of the vegetation management is dealt with by JCP&L. They cut things below their wires, and if the lower wires fall, that's okay, so that the vegetation management doesn't address these same trees can fall onto the telephone cable line and cable lines and cause outages for those. Shouldn't the various utilities be a little bit better at working together so that you don't have to prune the same tree by each of the utilities for all of them, and we do it once and do it right?
To answer that question, and that is a complicated question that could produce a complicated answer, but I'll try to keep it simple, okay? If there is a tree limb that even touches one of our conductors, that's a path to ground, below's a fuse, and there's an outage, okay? Just by virtue of the technology, and again, I'm certainly not, I don't work for the phone company, but I do know that based on the voltages is dramatically different, and the technology, the whole thing is, it's apples and oranges. But you can and do have limbs that are physically touching telephone wires, and it's not impacting or having a negative impact.
Phil, the squirrel's gone.
No, but it does not have a negative impact on your telephone service, right? But if that same tree limb just so much as brushes one of our wires. So to answer your question is, do you typically see much more robust line clearance when it comes to any of our wires? The answer is absolutely yes. But to the other part of your question was, you were saying, well, what about those trees? If there is a tree that we believe is going to interrupt or take down or break a pole or take our wires down, we're going to pursue that tree. It's not a matter of saying, well, that's just on the telephone line, because listen, as you know, if that tree comes down, and it's going to take everything with it. It's going to take all the poles, it's going to take the poles and the wires, and it doesn't care whose is whose. So to answer that question, but in general, yeah, you're going to see, just because if we are not out there doing 25% of the system every year and getting 4 years of clearance and a margin of error, you're going to have a lot more outages.
One of the things you're saying is that dominant clearing for the benefit of all utilities is dominantly done by JCP&L, the electorate. The other utilities don't do as much.
In other words, I'm only talking about the physical clearances.
Yes.
I have no idea what their budgets are and what their specifications are. I'm just saying that's the difference as I see it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Scott.
Scott Goldstein, 24 East Long Drive. I'm on the west end section of Homedale, such as the other person. Many of our communities that were built after mid-1980s, their infrastructure is underground. Your tree removal cost doesn't benefit us. Okay, I'll put it in plain English, okay? I have traced my lines to the substation. Okay, it's the distribution system. Okay, your proposal of cutting down trees and a 4-year cycle, or a 3-year cycle, or 8-year cycle doesn't benefit me at all, okay? In fact, I think that's the wrong approach. I think we really should do a cost-benefit analysis and think about alternative ways of putting this distribution to our community, especially for the distribution part of the system, which I refer to as the secondary part of the grid. I'd like to see a proposal where you're putting that on the ground and we eliminate this problem. We don't have to cut the trees down. I happen not to be a tree lover, but I think they look beautiful and the trimming you guys do, I understand it's necessary, it makes the neighborhood looks terrible. Okay? In addition, okay, we have the highest rates in the country for electricity. Okay? If I go to the state of Florida, okay, they deal with hurricanes every year. Okay? We know from the Monmouth County Reliability Proposal that your primary grid, okay, your transmission lines weren't affected. It was your distribution system. Okay? Your windage load with 3 transformers, which is what took out Sid's neighborhood, okay, is a big problem. Okay? Florida, they don't put the transformers up in the pole, they put them on the ground. They lighten the load, okay, for the storms. Okay, there are simple solutions like that. In other areas, you can put those on the ground. My whole neighborhood, infrastructure on the ground, transformers underneath the ground, okay? That's a way to solve the problem permanently, so we don't have to keep on spending every 4 years, or you guys don't have to every 4 years go back and solve this problem over and over again. My specific question, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer it, how much of the money that you're asking for is going to be actually coming to Homedale?
Okay. Again, you said a lot. I'm actually, just a minute, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mr. Jinks here, and he's going to be able to answer a lot of those technical questions. But I do want to just make one correction to a statement you made. You said that our electric rates are the highest in the country. Not true. As a matter of fact, not only is it not true, but, and again, all this is, God bless the internet, God bless Google, right? I encourage all of you, you can go back and look and say, for out of the 3 major utilities in New Jersey, Jersey Central, PSE&G, Atlantic City Electric, JCP&L's rates are by far the lowest of the 3 major electric companies.
So I'll correct my statement. I'm comparing against the bills that my buddy who lives in Florida, which is a hurricane-prone area.
You can also look in that there are there's 9 major regions in the country that are divvied up by the electric companies, and that you can look and see what the average rates are, electric rates, within these 9 regions around the country. And we are in the, as you can imagine, we're in the Mid-Atlantic region, and we are like middle of the pack. So I forget whether we're maybe 4 or 5, but even there, there are at least 3 to 4 regions of the country that electric rates overall are higher than ours. And as I said, within New Jersey, lowest by far.
Okay, but again, we are in one of the most densely populated states in the country. We should have basic engineering principles, economy of scales. You have more houses close together, more people paying, and this line should be lower, but our rates are higher than places like Florida.
All right, and with that, I would then like to turn it over to Mr. Jinks to talk a little bit more about overhead versus underground.
Thank you, John. For those that didn't hear, my name is Ed Jinks. Engineering. I pretty much run the reliability department for all Jersey Central Power and Light. And you did raise a number of good questions. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Question that we hear very often is one that you propose about underground versus overhead. And you propose that maybe it would be a better idea to implement a permanent solution, undergrounding, wholesale, a large.
So I'll go engineer to engineer, because I did dealt with networks in my career, with financial systems. Okay, we did a single point of failures. We made sure we had diversity. Okay, we solved those problems because we couldn't afford it. We had gap without the circuit. Same thing whether it's power. Okay, you're talking about spending all this money to cut down trees. I'm saying, have you looked at where the most vulnerable points are and consider about putting those sections underneath ground?
Sure.
So we don't have that vulnerability, and we design away the problem. So I would be much more supportive of paying additional money to solve a problem permanently than to put a Band-Aid on it by cutting down trees.
Certainly, I understand that. In engineering, as you know, we do cost-benefit analyses, and we look at net present value of all the things that we do. And so one of the things that you're proposing, like you said, is look at the more vulnerable areas of our system and consider perhaps putting it underground.
Or just a simple proposal, instead of having the windage of those 3 transformers with 3 phases up in the air, mount it on the ground. They do it all over Florida. Instead of having wooden poles, they do concrete poles, okay? And air poles are vertical, okay? And I don't know what the spec is on how much a pole should lean or how much tension it is, but when the pole leans, it seems to be, not a good thing.
Understood.
By the way, the pole I'm talking about is on the corner of Highway 34 and 520. You still haven't removed all the broken poles or dressed the wires on those poles. That's 6 years after Superstorm Sandy. Okay, so I don't have a high level of confidence you guys can execute these plans.
Understand.
Thank you, Scott. Yes.
My name's Rachel Knopf. I'm actually a resident of Middletown, but we weren't having an information session, so it was okay. I tagged along the home bills.
Oh, I don't know about that. Officer, you might have to ask.
I want to be honest about it up front. Understanding that this is a very expensive project that could cause a lot of benefit for the people of this area, I'm hoping you can quantify for us what metric you use currently to measure your outages in an area for your Homedale, Monmouth County, whatever geographic area you want to define. What are the current outage hours for a calendar year, for example, and how will that decrease in the future with the implementation of this program? Are we talking a negative, 10%? Are we talking it's going to halve the number of outages that residents are experiencing? So that's my first question that I'd like to have you guys hopefully address in your presentation. And then my next one has to do with ROI or ROE for you guys on this project. I know from some other research I've done that transmission projects tend to earn you guys between 10 and 12% of project costs back, in addition to obviously the cost of the project. What would your ROE on this project be? And would the full amount of the $400 million plus that ROE/ROI be funded by ratepayers, or would the money come from other sources?
Thanks for your question. I'll talk
Louder,
a little bit.
please.
Sure, sorry about that. So the first part of your question has to do with reliability metrics. What do we use? There are 3 basic reliability metrics that we use. And they have kind of complicated names, but I'll try to make it simple. The first one is called SAIDI, S-A-I-D-I. And what this basically quantifies is the overall uptime of service for all customers across our service territory. What we have found and what we typically trend around is 120 minutes or so of outages on average per customer per year. And we have 120 minutes, that was it? 120 minutes.
Per customer per year.
Per customer per year. Now, some customers have more, some customers have less. That's just the nature of averages. But that's the first one. The second metric that we use is called SAIFI, and that's S-A-I-F-I. And you can Google these and get the full picture. This is an industry standard type stuff. This deals with the frequency, and so this metric deals with how often is the average customer out of power. Could be for 5 minutes, could be for 5 hours or 5 days, but how many times do they actually lose power? Overall, New Jersey, JCP&L, we're around 1 to slightly more than 1 outage per customer per year, again, on average. And the final metric that we look at is called CAIDI, that's C-A-I-D-I, and that deals with the restoration time. So if a customer is out of power, how long does it take on average for that customer to get power back? And we trend just under 2 hours for restoration time. Some of these metrics are better than others, in my opinion, for quantifying how well the system is responding. For me personally, I try to look at more of SAIDI and safety, which deal with the overall uptime as well as the frequency of the outages. I feel like they're better metrics to really give you a good idea. And I can tell you that a lot of these projects that we're going to talk about today, specifically some of our recloser projects, which we'll talk about, will have a dramatic impact on those metrics. We'll also see some impact on CAIDI as well, just the restoration time, by virtue of the fact that a lot of the things that we're going to be doing is to improve communication and telemetry and bring a lot of information back to our operations center that right now we don't have the capability of doing. So we'll know when a lot of our infrastructure is operating or recloses are open or people are out of power instantaneously, whereas now we're kind of in a lag while people are calling in and we're trying to predict where the actual problem is. So hopefully that answers, kind of some of your questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And then, Rachel, on your second question regarding the ROI, that how this program will be implemented is there's going to be, once we get the, let's say, for example, and just as a hypothetical, BPU approves the program and we want to begin this in earnest in early 2019, okay? We'll get out and after about roughly the first 6 months, the way this, and again, it's designed by the board as an incentive to encourage this investment by the electric utilities. So what it does, and the gentleman mentioned earlier to say like, okay, there's going to be a rate case, but it's going to be years between rate cases. So part of it, again, I'm not a rates guy by any stretch of the imagination, but what you find is that as there is a long lag, the utility in the meantime is borrowing money, right, to continue to operate and make these investments, pay for storms, et cetera. And then when there's a base rate case, that's when you kind of like get everything equalized, if you will, and kind of like everybody gets their cards out on the table and we come up, okay, and this is where it's indicated, over-earning, under-earning, and then it's a way of kind of levelizing the playing field. So what this program is designed to do is having the utility come back in after we spend the money and kind of accelerate and almost do like it's as if it's like a mini rate case of sorts, where let's say, for example, we're going to be spending roughly, say, if the program's approved, roughly $50 million every 6 months. And then we go back to the BPU and say, okay, we've now spent this money, and in this case, we're expecting roughly about a 25-cent increase per bill. So again, based on the average utility residential customer, about a 25-cent increase on the bill every 6 months once we begin this project. And then it will cap out at $1.87. And then as the gentleman indicated, that when it's all said and done at the end of the 4 years, we go back in, do a rate case, a base rate case.
I guess, tangent on that, if you've been found to over-earning by a certain amount, I don't even know the quantity off the top of my head, can the BPU look at your proposal and say, yeah, this is great, cheese, now you fund it out of what you over-earned, and not go back to the ratepayers?
Well, understanding that, what this program will do, and is where we will need to demonstrate, for example, if we're going to say again roughly $50 million every 6 months, we will need to show the BPU and say, here, in essence, here are the receipts that we've spent the $50 million. Now we need to come in and make that 25-cent adjustment to start paying back that investment that we've made. You follow me? And that's what I'm saying. This work, and believe me, it gets complicated very quickly, but if you follow that.
I do follow what, in theory, kind of how it's meant to work on an ongoing rolling basis as you are between rate cases. I guess, looking at the bigger picture beyond this individual project, though, if the BPU has found essentially that we have overpaid you for the past X years, why would they approve us paying even more for you to do something when technically we're already indebted to you?
Well, in the last rate cases, when everything had already been, at that point, that had all been worked out as of the last rate case.
Okay, so as a ratepayer, and I apologize for not knowing the answer already, based on that over-earning, what did I get back, or what went down in my bill within the past, since the last rate case, to make me whole for the money I overpaid you for the past X years between rate cases?
I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that.
Was the remedy put forth to ratepayers, though?
Oh yeah, I can certainly, I will follow
Okay.
up, we'll find out, we'll get an answer to your question.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Jen. We're going to try to get to...
Jenny Blumenthal, 41 Stony Brook Road in Humdale. In 2008, the Shade Tree Committee, of which I was chairman at the time, contracted with the Davie people to do a hazardous tree survey in Humdale. And I didn't bring the papers here with me tonight, but there's no concern, no question that there is a concern about the everlast borer from the state forestry people. But we need not, in Humdale, at this point in time, get terribly excited about it, because I called the county shade tree people when I heard you folks were coming, and they said that they had had one sighting of an everlast borer, I believe, in Manalapan this year. And according to the data that we got from the hazard tree survey in 2008, there were a total of 625 ash trees in Humdale in the right-of-way along the streets, because that's all that they were contracted to do. And I have a list, and the town has an entire list on a CD of the location of every single one of those ash trees with A, B, and C condition on them as to whether they should go immediately, whether they should be eyeballed, or they're okay. So there's lots of other trees that are unhappy condition, although they're very tough, like the black locust. Certainly the silver maples fall apart when you look at them. But let's not go crazy over the concern of the ash trees. They have done serious damage in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and like the viper, it's coming. But it would behoove us to maybe do a little more work with the other utilities, as Ralph was kind of getting at, because folks who don't realize that this sort of triage, if you will, of the lines on these power poles, where the telephone and the Comcast are underneath, and then there's this big C in the middle, and it looks really bad, and because you seem to be active, and the amount of money you spend on pruning our trees here is expensive, enormous, because I used to have to submit that number to the state people for Tree City purposes. But the underlying, and the other utilities are reactive. So it'd be nice if we could kind of get together on it.
Thank you.
It's a problem.
Okay, thank you. Oh, boy. Barbara?
Barbara Singer, 5 years old. When I first walked in, you made a comment that the BPU will like your plan. You're hearing a lot of skepticism from the residents here who are coming in with a history where, we're already questioning overpayments and maintenance we feel should have been done all along. That hasn't been done. And I know after that, with the whole MCRP project, I attended the first New Jersey Transit hearing, and your representative, when being questioned by the BPU, was asked what that project would fix as far as past outages. He fumbled around, and his final answer was that he did not come here prepared to answer those questions. That was really surprising to hear, because it was an important meeting. I was in like the third overflow room. It was very crowded. After that, we go through the MCRP project. And I'm an attorney. I did read the judge's opinion. It was scathing. I've been in law over 30 years. We find that misleading information was submitted, if not false information. That you've utilized an expert who plagiarized, something we teach our kids all the time around here not to do. You're not coming in here with a good history. And hence all this skepticism as far as the money, why are we paying more for things we feel should already have been done? Scott had great questions on what are we doing on the technology end, because we also found out in the MCRP project that there were alternatives that were not really vetted properly. And I think, we had a question here on the money, and your response to Rachel is, well, it gets complicated very quick. This is a community, we're smart, we organize, we can understand the information, okay? And I think, the bottom line, as I'm hearing tonight, is, why do we believe you, and what makes you believe that the BPU will so readily like your plan?
Allow me then to clarify what I said. What I said is that we have built in the Reliability Plus plan, we've put together what we believe to be our best foot forward to do exactly what this program is intended to do, and that is to provide reliability and, relatively speaking, quickly improve reliability. And that's really how this plan was developed. So in other words, we're looking at our target audience for approval as the Board of Public Utilities. They gave us their parameters, their guidelines of what they would like this plan to be and what they would like it to do. So what I said is that we have tried our best to put our best foot forward to put a plan together that will address the issues and the concerns that the BPU has. And as I said, and I'm not asking, and I'm not here to be, all things to all people here tonight, The purpose of the meeting tonight is to, again, any questions that we can answer, we will. And between the three of us, if we don't have an answer, we're going to tell you we don't have the answer, and I can get back to you. And when it comes to something like rates, it has nothing to do with to say, like, you're not going to understand it. I'm just saying that in general, when I say it gets complicated, I'm not qualified to speak in that level of detail when it comes to rate making. So I would be, it would be doing all of you here tonight a disservice if I was trying to answer a question that I simply wasn't qualified to answer. So I'll be more than happy to get back to Rachel and provide her the answer.
Yeah, and everything you just said about your belief in this plan is what we heard about the MCRP plan as well. I mean, you could have just cut and paste that. So I really do hope you've learned after that whole process that we do want answers, and we do want technical answers and specific information. And when we're trying to have different ideas, that there are alternatives that were shown and discussed, the pros and the cons, so that we do know you have looked at all these things.
And again, which goes back to your point, which is why you'll be hearing soon enough that they will be announcing when the public hearings are. And that's again, a perfect opportunity with the VPU there, with us, and our staffs and our subject matter experts will be there. And we're in a position that, it's something like that in general, we're not there to have kind of a Q&A, but it is the opportunity for someone like yourself, or anyone from the public, whatever concerns you have, whatever issues you have, that's the opportunity, obviously, to get those on the record.
I think it's a little bit uphill after the last round. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Carol, we're going to turn the presentation on at 9 o'clock, so let's try to get the questions done.